these times won't last, even though they've been tough. Just let them know my people been had enough. Tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise. Tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise. Yeah. I know these times won't last, even though they've been tough. Just let them know my people been had enough. Tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise. I tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise up. Please, Lord, forgive them. They try to hold back and chillin' like they ain't know it was written. Break every chain. Wanna free my people from mental prisons. With your eyes on the sparrow, I know we'll narrow divisions. Hope is the boat to keep us afloat just as you envision. Faith to erase the pain from all of our people slain. Destined for change, actions to back up your spoken name. When they throw dirt on ours, we use it to play the game. When it rains, we go greater together, no matter the weather. Trust these dark days, gonna get better. Know that love will be the light to guide all our endeavors. And even if the tide should rise, we'll ride it forever. Why? We are mighty, we'll fight for our lives, cause we're dying to live. Future is ours, the timing is now. Black and we proud, we're saying it loud, we gave it a roar. There's so much more to give, we bring it down on the wall. I know these times won't last, even though they've been tough. Just let them know my people been had enough. Tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise. Tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise. Yeah. I know these times won't last, even though they've been tough. Just let them know my people been had enough. Tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise. I tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise up. Never backing down for the cause. Trying to put our life on pause, cause we move in the image of God. No matter the hate that's spoken, our spirits remain unbroken. The divine man says you can't count us out. We are the answer. From the youth to the elders, ain't much you can tell us. Style and brilliance of mind, heart as bright as sunshine. Warrior spirits alive, so no, we won't be denied. So vibration is high, and the frequency so angelic, like. People come on, rise I know these times won't last, even though they've been tough. Just let them know my people been had enough. Tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise. Tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise. Yeah. I know these times won't last, even though they've been tough. Just let them know my people been had enough. Tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise. I tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise up.
Yeah. Ba-da-bum-bum. What's up, family? Peace and power. Peace and power, family. This is Soundbytes International Radio. Black consciousness is the claim.
One world is the aim.
Absolutely. Bringing the conversations pertinent to our diasporic landscape to help heal, educate, and empower and uplift you, and you all across the globe. And you. For those of us who don't know, I'm Hasir Khan Nefra, and this is
Nefra to my Ra.
Absolutely. Your hosts bringing all of the most and what we can for our people's dim. So it's been a while, family. We do know that. We appreciate those that have been hanging on with us and been checking in with us and wondering what's coming up next. So we definitely appreciate that particular love. So I guess first things first, we wanted to just let people know about season 5's coming up. That's right, we're in our 5th seasons coming up.
Give thanks.
So we've been prepping and just getting ready for that. And that is coming on June 19th. That's Juneteenth. We're going to do a special inaugural season 5 broadcast on Juneteenth. And then of course go back to our regular schedule, as you may know it. So stay tuned for that. We'll be promoting more pretty soon around that. We're really excited to get back in front of your faces and chat with your family and in your hearts and your minds about all of the things. But we're really here. We wanted to jump on and do a special broadcast because it is a special day. It's a very special day in honor and in commemoration and in celebration of the life of one of our most influential leaders within our time, within this U.S. history, within our African history. incomparable leader, the brother Hajj Malik Shabazz, aka Malcolm Little, aka Malcolm X.
Ashe.
It is his born day
The People's
celebration.
Prince.
The People's Prince.
Yes. Give
He
thanks.
would be with 96, 96
Yes,
today on this day.
96 on today.
And what a time would be if he was with us on in this
What
time.
a time.
What a time indeed. We do have a few with us that were around the rings time. We have Harry Belafonte, he's like 95 right now. So imagine like what would have been like, to have him, have Brother Martin around in this time, and the energy he would have brought to the people. But nevertheless, the legacy does live on within us, with us here at Soundbytes, and we hope it within your hearts as well. As we put into practice as not a perfect people, but imperfect and empowered with ourselves and our identities and understanding who we are as Africans on this soil, across the globe as one people, Pan-African all the way.
All day, every day.
Absolutely, absolutely. But we wanted to share a little something first to set the tone. And if I don't know if you wanted to,
yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and take in our elder, our ancestor, and just hear his words in the purest essence that he gave them to us. So let's take a look. We'll discuss afterwards, family.
Absolutely. Sit tight.
33 years or more that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has been teaching us. The charge of violence against us actually stems from the guilt complex that exists in the conscious and subconscious minds of most white people in this country. They know that they've been violent in their brutality against Negroes, and they feel that someday the Negro is going to wake up and try and do unto them as they have do unto the whites as the whites have done unto us. We aren't a violent group. We are taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to obey the law, to respect everyone who respects us. We're taught to display courtesy, to be polite. But we're also taught that at any time anyone in any way inflicts or seeks to inflict violence upon us, we are within our religious rights to retaliate in self-defense to the maximum degree of our ability. We never initiate any violence upon anyone, but if anyone attacks us, we reserve the right to defend ourselves. So to accuse us of being violent is like accusing a man who is being lynched, who is being hung on a tree, simply because he struggles vigorously against his lyncher. The victim is accused of violence, but the lyncher is never accused of violence. And I only point this out because the various racist groups that are set up in this country by whites and who have actually practiced violence against blacks for 400 years are never associated or identified or made synonymous with the term violence. But whites speak of Muslims almost synonymously with violence. Whenever Muslims are mentioned by them, violence is brought up, but it's not connected with any other group. This is a sort of a propaganda tactic, or what I would call psychological warfare, to in some way make the image of the Muslims in this country be a violent image rather than a religious image.
I'd like to ask.
Yes, indeed, family. Yes, indeed. That was the honorable brother, the People's Prince himself, Malcolm X, sharing his powerful words of wisdom and reflection, and as a master orator, one who always captivates me every time I hear him speak. To lay out the foundation in the conversation of what violence looks like and on whom and how we even at that time, this was an interview from 1963 at Berkeley.
At Berkeley.
In that time, just how perception has lent itself to definition of who is the enemy, who's friend, who's foe, who's violent, who's not,
right.
Which groups serve in those spaces, which groups are again, friend or foe or what have you. So it's very, when we look at this conversations, right, that brother Malcolm had, we look at where we're at now. We're looking at 2021. And the reflections on the actions of 2020 years of recent, the heightened senses of really a reflection of even that time in the 60s, right? Some people call it the new age civil rights movement, the nouveau civil rights movement, or what have you. Um, and we want to reflect on the reality that these things are still taking place, right? Brother Malcolm, he was what, that was 1965 when he was assassinated. Just what, like 2 years? He was about 37 around this time. 39.
Oh,
when
30,
he, when,
yeah,
yeah,
30,
around
around
this
that
time he was
time.
37. He would have been 96
Right.
in this day. So roughly almost 30 years.
Jeez.
No, 30 years. Wow, 60 years. Um, since that time that we're looking at, and we're still in essence in some form of that same fight. So we want to really reflect on what gets to be different, right? What gets to change? How have the words that Malcolm spoke and the likes of Malcolm have spoken in that time? How have they resonated, or have they not resonated with our people in having these particular conversations, and the tie-ins with how we look at uh, our relation to other groups, and the conversation of people of color, and a solidarity, and an alliance, and a fight against injustices against people, and the putting an end to oppression for people, especially people of color, particularly the African on the U.S. soil. Who's faced a lot of the brutality over time, over the past 400 years, and then some. If you want to share your thoughts.
Yeah, I look at and we look at our leadership. Malcolm, for one, he's our resident. I've walked with him since I was about 17, specifically because of the intention of self-ownership. We talk about self-efficacy. We as a culture of people have consistently learned to be dependent. We have a dependence, what I call a subordinate posture. It's a natural inclination. Most of us never see it our entire lives. We come and go, and it never occurs to us. So Malcolm was very different to me in the way that I essentially, not often, I assign or I prescribe individuals that are on their journey to source his energy. Not him, but his energy. Source what he facilitated. And he was a teacher. And he also held the African as capable. I believe that inside of our subordinate posture and the some of the backwards manipulative thinking that we come up with in our functions of our social experience, people say things like meet people where they are. Malcolm did not. He spoke to a beautiful people that need some healing, right? But he gave you solutions for your healing and some actionable steps. And some things to do to start to get your mind right, which is what made him so different from different styles of leadership. Because of the fact that he actually prescribed behavior. His foundation was based in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's instruction and the teaching of Islam. However, separate and apart, Malcolm will say to you as an African in this experience, we're evolving and we have a lot of healing to do. So if this is your mechanism, it's fine to use your mechanism, because Malcolm was international. He was an international person. He was a global-minded individual. It wasn't just about just Black people or just African people, but specifically that's the foundation of African people. However, we coexist in the world in harmony with others. And there's disruption in the space. We have hurt and harm and trauma, and we have to defend ourselves, and we have to take care of ourselves. We have to nourish ourselves and love on each other. And that came through if we are synthesizing what he's saying and not listening as the Amen choir. So I often say this, and this is part of what I have personally adopted along with my ways of being in terms of how we are with our community and our people. You're capable. You got some bruises. We're going to work those out. We got things to do. You and me, let's get in this ground. Let's get it working, right? Let's get to the doing.
Right.
Because we can't continue to be the Amen choir. We've been the Amen choir. We didn't get here overnight, right? But I don't want to diminish your capability. I want you to know that you have the ability to be the difference and to sustain it, because unfortunately we've had so many years since he left, was taken.
Yeah.
And it happened at the hands of another black man, although we know there were puppet masters in the space. But one black man took the sword to another black man, which is the greatest catastrophe in our loss of Brother Malcolm. His family was severely devastated by this. And the unfortunate circumstance of his absence. We've been functioning within this society because a lot of what we do is in response to what we know the response is going to be to our actions. We know that our words are being policed. We shared that particular clip because it was him on stage at Berkeley College in 1963 saying, we're not violent people. It's not in our essential energy to be violent, but it is our right to defend our lives. And I know the manipulation goes out there, which is why I specifically say to you, African, your goals and intentions are different from other people's. They are fundamentally at odds, because it's no way you can literally look me in my face and tell me that you beating me in my head and I shouldn't have a problem with that. This has happened over the course of history. This is what I've always been taught. We're going to look at some of our other, just to take a quick glance, because May 19th is shared birthday of both Malcolm X, Ho Chi Minh, and Yuri Kachiyama. All three of them, right? Yuri Kachiyama, a Japanese American activist. Ho Chi Minh, Vietnamese Prime Minister President. And the propaganda that goes around the world, you want to segue that into what's happening now with Palestine and various facets around the planet right now of the oppressed becoming the oppressor, and then also dictating the narrative of what the behavior and what the actions that are acceptable.
Right.
He said in this clip, he said, it's like the man that's being lynched, fighting for his life, to keep his life, being blamed for hurting or for coming, or for fighting for his life against the one who's trying to take his life.
Right.
You are listen, psychology is fight or flight. If you're in trouble, you're either supposed to fight or run. And the fact that African people, we are caught in a space where we're not really doing either, that's something to look at.
Right. Neutrality leaves you just as complicit with the violence as, literally being the person inflicting it. So what do we do? What do we do to look forward to what's happening and make a decision that can transform the landscape?
But that's what we missed.
Exactly.
When we talk about what would it be? Because, we go through this all the time. What would it be if Brother Malcolm had lived out his journey and intention, not only his intention, but his divine assignment? Because we get caught up in the flesh. We get caught up in the person. It's never about the person. It's what that person facilitates. Brother Malcolm did something very specifically different than any of the other individuals, leadership of that time, even until now. He is his own essential energy. There has been none mildly or remotely similar. None by comparison. Specifically, more than that was the purity in the essential energy that is not duplicatable. Everyone has to lock onto their own signal. Everyone has to have their own specific essential energy, and they have to that individual has to hold it. And That's what the leader facilitates. The leader facilitates holding space by having access to his own essential energy. So tap dancing and tambourines, all of that's well and good. That's why I tell you, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because we're all on the journey. We're trying to get there.
There's something
Hopefully.
in
There's something in it. Don't throw it away. There's something in it. Train your discernment.
Right.
But Malcolm X is unmatched. It's unmatched. Yeah. And we have such a devastation without having had, not to compare him, right? He was an essential force, that he was uniquely blessed, his unique divination, if you will, for our African spirituality, his divination, right, allowed him access to certain portals and abilities. Most importantly, holding that much space for worldwide impact. Worldwide impact. His impact was not just in Harlem. We know this because he impacted Ho Chi Minh. He also impacted Yuri Kachiyama. So we want to be clear, and these individuals, while also people of color from different parts of the planet, there was this. And I can say that a lot of people walk with African people through our journey. A lot of people from other cultures walked with us, hand in hand, learned from us, learned from our fire, learned from us, took from us, added to themselves, expanded themselves, contributed to us. As time went on, they dissipated. Part of the reason, not only were they on their own journey for healing, but also because we didn't continue the commitment the way we had. We've changed. The majority of us, we've done integration. And Malcolm that wasn't his jam.
That was
not his jam. He went to Mecca, came back and said, "Oh, every people is at Mecca." That's a different conversation, but it must be discerned, because that was a humanistic approach. Black consciousness is the aim, one world. Black consciousness is the claim, one world is the aim. Right. That is a worldview, because we are a people to create harmony and unity and all those things. But we also are a people who are greatly hurt, harmed, and the diaspora we are scattered about. And we're the people who are rejected everywhere we go. And we need shelter and safety. And that should be our priority.
Right.
But in terms of integration, just because he understood as an academic and as a teacher and as a demonstration of the work, he understood that it's dangerous, because our people haven't solidified our dedication yet, our discipline. We were in our stages. And this is something that I look out into the world all the time, because I'm looking and I'm cataloging our learning process as a community of people. This is really not a game. This is our lives. And we really need a different environment. Yeah. So I personally go through every now and again in the sourcing of our brother Malcolm, like a spiritual, like, is very profound, because what a brother took from the people, for whatever reason, a African took the sword to another African, took that facilitating force from the people, and the people over the past 60 years have continued to be disheveled. Small little itty bitty pockets of something different, right? Of grappling for a way of being and a learning and a facilitation. It's varying facets of things.
And I think it's a diabolical takedown when you look at the structures and things that the oppressive system has implemented, especially when it comes to taking down the black messiah, so to speak, right? I mean, when you look at how we lost the brother Malcolm, and then we always look at recently we had the movie that briefly highlighted around brother Fred Hampton, Chairman Fred, who's also taken down, essentially taken down or through betrayal, so to speak, of another African.
Right.
You know, and what the system is implemented into these particular souls and this type of like infiltration that has left us essentially with this challenging feeling of trust within one another, which you can see shows up in this very day, you know, where it's unification of the idea of blackness or one people or black power or you know, all these it becomes more symbolic than it is an actual application of practice, right? The application of practice is actually lost amidst the performative you know, symbols that tend to take place, and that we make ourselves accustomed to, right? We're just like, this is what it is. This is what blackness means. Actually, no, that's a symbol. Yeah. That's a symbol. What is that? The blackness of the Africanness is actually in the application, because when in the application, you feel what's being executed. And then from there, you're passing the baton executed with other African folks. Within that identification and understanding of what it means to be African, what it means to identify as such, what it means to identify in the culture, in the speech, in the history of what it means to be an African beyond even the U.S. soil, it is an application that becomes a truth that's undeniable and that's able to be spread like wildfire if we let it. But unfortunately, what has taken place, when we look at how we've lost, like, you know, brothers Malcolm and brother Fred, it's a diabolical play that's we haven't realized and haven't been able to bounce back from in the same way over the past 60 years. So that's what we want to really like see, how we examine those pieces very deeply, very critically. We've strayed from what we observed. We've strayed from that critical analysis on our human experience, right? How are we actually analyzing our human experience on that day to day as Africans, as other people? Critical thought is being taken away. Someone's successfully defined the thought processes for all of us now. Here's what's good. Someone made a mistake and put blackface in their clothing line. Well, here, they're just going to apologize. It's going to be all good. And we've come to a point where we just accept that someone, the oppressor or those that benefit from the system of oppression or white supremacy, are going to do something that seems like a major trespassing. And then if they say sorry, we forgive, right? And then forgiveness goes a long way of like where there's inaction. And that's something that needs to change. And it becomes an attack on our character, an attack on our being and our identity. In which case, Brother Malcolm said himself, and you know, essentially, we're not the ones to inflict the violence or the harm, but should it be brought onto us, we have a duty and a right within the religion of whatever it is, Islam or ourself, in our human agency,
exactly,
to respond accordingly.
That's right.
In other words, we may not start the smoke or want the smoke, but we sure enough will light it on fire if we need to, as a response.
That's the only thing that is expected. This is why some countries, there's some advocates that says, you know what, everybody should have a gun.
Yeah.
Because if everybody got guns, folks might think twice. You got a gun, I got a gun. What now?
Right.
Just to quote unquote level the playing field. I don't personally believe, or as he said, he does not incite violence. I don't believe in violence. I do believe that you should protect yourself.
Yes.
I do believe that you should make strategies to keep yourself from harm and your community. When I say I, sometimes I'm talking about myself, sometimes I'm talking about our community as a collective or an experience that I know others in that space may be also having. So you should be protecting yourself.
Yes.
You should not be allowing yourself to be policed, which is a petrification and a subtle manipulation of being a part of the system. Right? There's so many things that cut across our development that had we had access to Brother Malcolm was guiding our community into a certain way, which is why I consistently say to you, African, it's really not a conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy. There literally are several groups of individuals that are cutting across your quality of life. They are undermining your efforts. You ever had a friend that gives you advice, but it's actually bad advice, but they're just giving it to you because you can't go get better than them with that advice? Because it's really about ego. So part of you saying about us not doing the analysis of our real behavior, it's actually steeped in ego.
Yeah.
It's because people are in quote unquote leadership positions. They are in the front of the room. and they have not yet cataloged their own learning. The most beautiful thing I loved about Malcolm is that while he was on his journey of expanding as an African, and also and secondary, right, he was also a servant of the people, right?
Yes.
He was also a Muslim. He was also a husband. He was also a brother. He was also evolving as an individual, and he did it. Too. He did it without embarrassment. He did it eloquently, and he did it up front, because there are no big I's or little U's anywhere. We're in this matrix. I'm in the front of the oven. You're in the back. We are still in the oven, though. Like, how does that make you better? So there are groups of us today in this very moment that are not making a proper assessment of our condition because they believe it's ego. They're doing something. They don't want to make it seem like they're not doing enough, or their offering isn't good enough. But guess what? The mess that we in, one person is not going to be able to take care of it all.
Right.
There's a place for what we all have. We all have an essential energy that we need to lock on to and find. It took me personally. This is me personally. It took me, first of all, I had to be designated and demonstrated as a calling outside of myself while I was on my own journey. Once I came to the realization that there was a calling for me personally, I then needed to understand how to understand that calling, and how to understand how to facilitate it best, how to understand how to communicate with it best, how to conduct it best. This is all a learning curve, and it is a process. And the only reason that I have been in the process is because I have been in the work. Malcolm was consistently in the work. I have sourced Malcolm. I have sourced Fannie Lou Hamer personally. These are my personal guides, right? The closest ones to me as an African child of enslaved Africans here in America, right? So, and that process was a long process of being and researching and taking from the essence and the synthesis of what he has said. What the synthesis of what he has said, and put it in my life. We're gonna read it. I'm gonna read one of his clips. I'm gonna read Ho Chi Minh. Nothing is more precious than independence and liberty. Nothing.
Purred. Purred.
Take another one of his.
It is better to sacrifice everything than to live in slavery. And that's
by any means necessary. What do you think?
Yes.
The consciousness of this.
Right. But so many words. Yeah.
Interwoven.
Absolutely. When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. Didn't Malcolm say that as well? Influence.
Interconnectedness, right? These are our people. These are all the people of the planet.
Absolutely.
As stewards of the planet.
We have here from Yuri, unless we know ourselves and our history and other people and their history, there's really no way that we can really have positive kind of interaction where there is real understanding. Yes. And that's a commitment to not only self-identification, but identifying those around you, and to this empathy, compassion. And within that, what do we get to understand of each other and what it means to be human to one another? And let's see, we have here from Yuri Kochiyama. Remember that consciousness is power. Consciousness is education and knowledge. Consciousness is becoming aware. It is the perfect vehicle for students. Consciousness raising is pertinent for power, and be sure that power will not be abusively used, but used for building trust and goodwill domestically and internationally. Tomorrow's world is yours to build. Ashe in that. So
go ahead. We get to understand, overstand our journey into what we're creating as a community. We as African people are not unique in our suffering at the hands of oppressive forces. But we haven't spent enough time as a community healing each other. Vietnamese people, the Vietnamese, they've spent time healing themselves. They have a shared experience that devastated their cultural experience. It is said that they actually dropped. Let me just read something really quickly.
Really quick, just want to give a shout out to our sister Dot Sing Blessings, and we appreciate you coming on with us and standing with us and standing in that unification and that solidarity. We appreciate you, sister, always, definitely. So Dot Sing said generational traumas is too real, absolutely. And like you said, it's about a shared understanding, and that we're not necessarily alone in this particular plight of trauma. But
we're not unique. We're not unique.
We're not unique.
They said American military reasoned that if it could sufficiently damage the enemy, would be unable to sustain itself. So it dropped 3 million tons of explosives on Laos, called the Trail of Tears. But I'm trying to figure out, what is an enemy, right? There's a philosophy, because there is a philosophy. We have names, right? In this society, you got names. Capitalism, right? I don't say white supremacy. I know people who have a white cultural experience, people make things happen and people don't make things happen. We don't actually, I have to look at people with the slight eye when they're in the front of the room and they say that they stand for justice, but they don't call a spade a spade. They tap dance around it. I have a big problem with that because they don't want to offend people in the room. No one can police my language. No one can police my tone. No one can tell me anything about the rage, righteous anger, and the frustration, and the love and protection that's in my tone, right? Protection is in my tone. If you hear that, that's protection in my tone. That's an alarm. If you don't understand me, I'm not talking to you, right? So it's there because there's a need for people to take urgent action. Whether you are a part of the problem, and inaction is a part of the problem by default. Just so you know, there are no spectators in this game. In this life, because there are people causing harm to other people, and no one has the right to turn the lights on and off somebody. The divine gives life, the essential energy, soul force in every being. People have the right to their own lives. If you don't like that they don't want to play with you, if you don't like that communism is their way of life, they can choose communism. That is their way of life. You don't have the right to intrude on their right to their way of life that they decided was sufficient for them.
Right.
And suddenly everyone becomes the enemy, as Malcolm said. Muslim is almost synonymous with violence. How is this possible? Who's dictating these narratives? Who's undermining harmony? Who wants to keep confusion in the space? Because do you know, everybody always screaming about the 48 laws of power. The great majority of the 48 laws of power is based in manipulation and deception.
If you really listen to it.
So for people who actually are like, yeah, 48 laws of power, I'm looking at you like, you trifling.
Yeah.
You mighty trifling. Because you want to deceive. You know what? You can walk through the front door and you can stand in the light, because they had been doing it for thousands of years before all of this mess came into the space where it was systematic harm done to human beings. People would have evolved anyway. Necessity is the author of creation. People would have already evolved. You got 15-year-olds, 9-year-olds going to Ivy League colleges right now. It's not even a thing.
6-year-olds.
It's not even a thing. Like an African, it's just not a thing. Like in other cultures, it's really not a thing. It's only in America where our generally newspapers in every state are written, the general newspaper is written to 8th grade education. It's only in America that happens. It's important to keep Americans dumb and caught up in the illusion. In other cultures, genius is an everyday occurrence. Everyday occurrence. So when they say that certain people are evil, are the enemy, I then need to understand who's benefiting from these people being an enemy. Whose bank, who's manipulating the military? Hiroshima, Nagasaki, are you kidding me right now? What's happening right now? Where we doing this at? Where are we doing this at? I'm considering that if Brother Malcolm had still been living, the people of America, the Africans of America, would have come a long way.
Yeah.
Because And not that we needed to be Muslim to come a long way. And that's another really big thing that I really loved about him, is that you didn't have to be Muslim for him to feed you and hold space for your growth. And the system, which is why I have so much respect for Islam, the way that it's cataloged in terms of system. I'm a natural born Libra, right? I'm born with the spirit in my eye. So I'm going to always be trying to find balance and to correct things and to make things system and order. It's such a natural inclination to me, right? So disorder and out of balance doesn't work with my energy. So individuals in my space are going to want to improve themselves because they're going to get an essence of my spiritual frequency, which is to create order. So you're going to create order without words. I don't have to speak to you. I don't have to say anything to you. Malcolm had that effect on people because he was the blessing, because he was the application of the energy, because I'm not telling you to do anything that I'm not doing. African, if I can do it, you can do it too. There's no big eyes in little you. I may be at the front of the room, but we the same. We both still in the oven. And since I know Malcolm didn't want to stay in the oven, he was intentioning and making the moves and decisions and relationships to support African people because he understood that in order for you to actually make the moves that are going to support African people, you can't do it here. Africans have a domestic violence relationship with this American experience. It's domestic violence.
It's abuse.
It's abuse. We are petrified in fear. We refuse to leave, and we gripe while we here. He knew this. So he was also helping to retrain us to decolonize our consciousness and to give us self-efficacy. Man can't give you freedom. If you want freedom, you got to take freedom. Nobody can give you freedom. God gives freedom. The divine gives freedom. The divine gives life. See, some Africans did not know that was available to them. Africans to this day, I'm speaking to a 23-year-old, he says to me, oh, black folks can't do that. Well, look how black folks behave. 23. If we had our own state, it's going to be a mess. This is what he's saying to me.
That's what he believes in.
This is what he believes.
This is what he's grown to believe in.
Because World Star is his reference point. So not only has individuals undermining progress in the African community, constantly creating dishevelment, confusion, backbiting, trying to payola to pull people in, seductive manipulation, all of the three-card mantra, the things that SBN, all the things that they do to create mischief so that they continue to have the upper hand because now you're destable, because you're not in unity. So all these things are mechanisms used. If you don't understand the matrix, what it is and how it works, everything you think you know will only confuse you. Because you have no idea. You caught up in smiling faces. Grow up. Grow up. Brother Malcolm was trying to inoculate us to that foolishness so that we would focus and have tunnel vision and have a sense of discipline, self-discipline. Nobody needs to be looking when you have an integrity. You need to be doing the right thing when nobody is there. You need to be having commitment because we have to have sustained commitment to our liberation and freedom.
Right. The right thing is about the right thing, not about who's doing it.
Sustained. Nobody has to be watching you do the right thing. You just do the right thing because African, you have an internal compass that says so. Remember, you've been functioning inside of a warped mentality. You've been functioning inside of the kind of warped mentality that says it's okay to bomb people, innocent people that have nothing to do with what their governments are doing, right? You are inside of a warped consciousness. And we need to call a spade a spade. The higher you go, the whiter you get. The people that are making the decisions to drop bombs on people and hurt people and designate these people as enemies happen to be white by virtue of that theory. They happen to be white. Not all of them, but generally, those are the individuals that are pulling everybody into this manipulative round table. And
then there are those that subscribe and agree to pushing forward.
Complacency.
Yeah, exactly. Being complicit with it.
So that's not the white man is a devil. Just to break it down, right? Just to break it down on that Malcolm talk. It's not that, oh, the white man is a devil just came out of left field. That didn't come out of left field. Something is dysfunctional, warped, if you will, There should be a psychosis. There's several types of psychosis for it. Visions of grandeur, white savior complex, a white man's burden, whatever they want, however they choose to say, to narrate it. There is no narrative where you bomb human beings that if you have a beef with somebody, go to their house and see them. Those people in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, those people in Vietnam, those children in Palestine, they have nothing to do with what their governments are doing. They just like us. They out here making a way for themselves and trying to feed their families and keep safety. That's what they're doing. They're not enemies. They're people. They're humans. They are living. They're doing what they do. So all of those puppet masters and Battleship and playing Monopoly with real people lives, Battleship, people, there's groups of people that are playing Battleship in real life.
Right.
And now they have even more advanced tools to use to continue to play Battleship.
Right.
Because that's all there's ever been. But we think, because we're not thinking outside the box, that this is the only being that there is to be. Malcolm wanted to demonstrate that there is other being than this. We're not the same people that was in Egypt. We're not the same people that was in Africa 2,000 years ago. We're different people. But we do have a baseline of information. So we're not that disorganized. There are some very fundamental things about what we can ... what is quality of life for the African. See, quality of life for the African doesn't mean, because there's people out here that, black folks need jobs. No, they don't. Black folks don't need jobs, because that means that you believe that what would be helpful to black people would be to make them lapdogs sitting under your table waiting for a handout. That's what you're saying. So when people say things like that, African, you need to correct them.
Absolutely.
Because African people who have self-efficacy, don't have to look to someone to feed them. And if you need a job, that means you're knocking on the person's door who actually makes the decisions.
Right.
That means you're begging. No, you made an exchange. You gave energy. You gave intellectual property. You got a paycheck. But that's not what African people need to create sovereignty and self-efficacy for their people and protection to keep them from the vulnerabilities of the matrix.
Right.
Of the people at the round table. Great large number of them happen to be white people. What does that mean? What is this mathematics? 1 + 1 = 2. How do you calculate this? That's not my problem. As an African, I just need to know that. That's the information. Put a push pin in this, because that's going to change the way I'm behaving. I'm going to behave this way over here. I'm going to behave this way with my African people. I'm going to be doing this with my community experience. I'm going to be doing this with my human experience. I'm not going to just take in, those people are enemies, and just be mad with them. I'm going to do some research for myself. I'm going to do some cataloging myself. And I'm going to say, let me sympathize with those people. Let me look at their journey and their struggle, because they pretty much have been in the same boat as I've been.
Right. Great. Yeah, Grace will give us an opportunity to really examine just where we are within this whole struggle, and looking at, we want to be mindful of what we're looking at as our leg up, or as our need, as our necessity within the confines of the matrix, right? Because with a lot of us, we've either been indoctrinated and then conditioned, and then, or born into what the matrix has us to offer. So that's the only scope that we have in which to analyze our experience, unless we take the opportunity and take the moment to take the time to deep dive into our history and understanding who we are, and do that critical particular analysis. Because then what we have is that we're looking at the idea of, you need to get it, you need to get a job, and working under whom, and under what particular scope, right? Or like, this person is the first Black person or the first African person to do this, first in terms of whose definition, in whose nation, at whose table, right? Who's defining these things? Because these things that we become the first stat within this U.S. framework, which has been successfully put as the world framework.
Right.
There's one nation, there's one country,
this big
in a continent, an entire planet,
right,
has successfully positioned themselves in a lot of people's eyes as the mainframe of what our human
how they position themselves?
bully the whole entire planet.
Bullied.
colonization, within the successful colonization, neocolonialism that's taken place over the course of our history, that's implemented itself in every single pocket of the globe, to where even despite the cultural differences in different countries and how they may operate within their own agency, there are still sprinkles of European influence, that Euro-Gentile influence, that white-centered consciousness, this idea of whiteness as a standard for beauty in all these different places, where you got in Korea, where you have to be pale, white, ghostly, and that's pretty, where you can even be the remote hint of any tanness,
and you're dark,
and you're considered dark-skinned.
Sister told me that, I was shocked.
That's just a major thing. Look if you ever seen the Wizard. Is it Good Hair? One of those things where like that was the conversation, or dark. I forgot what the documentary was where that story came up. But we want to look at how this psychosis has implemented and infiltrated every aspect of this earthly kind of just experience, this human experience, right? So it influences you on teaching you how to hate yourself, or not agree with who you are, who you've grown up with, or feeling like you're being bullied in school as a kid for your cultural differences, and it's leading you to live this life that's a fallacy of who you actually are, and it's actually more than likely a lower vibration of where you actually come from, and where you could be identifying in your truest self. So there's a lot of peeling back that's slowly taking place, not only with African folks, but a lot of people, whether they're East Indian or whether they're Asian or what have you, that are looking at these conversations a little bit differently more and more. But it is really within the onus of the African to really examine deeply where we are within our human experience and our identification with self beyond what a white supremacist structure has said what blackness is, because now we're getting to the space where they're defining what blackness is for black people, for African people.
Slipped away.
This is what's cool blackness, and owning the space of social justice and shaping what that looks like, that ends up being a comfortable thing for them to swallow, to where it is acceptable in TV commercials or on the late night news or on the daytime news, that this fight is right. We need to paint this mural and paint these streets and do these things, and they're the ones defining these as the acceptable pathways to understanding your blackness. How did we get to that space? And when how do we get to where we're looking at these things that the front facing could be an African, but the back end, the mechanism and puppetry and maneuvering is of a white consciousness, and an African themselves are moving again, born in and synthesizing their experience within the consciousness of whiteness. So this is what we're dealing with. What we have to peel back and extract and look towards actually being in practice of the ideals and methodologies and the teachings of brothers the likes of Malcolm that have imparted on us, before being taken away. And we want to understand the reasons of why he was taken away. And then looking at the space in which this is happening, we're looking at today, peaceful protests and nonviolence is the way. Okay, Martin Luther King was about nonviolence, and they killed him too.
That's right. Why is that?
So why is that? You have a Malcolm who was considered this radical militant. He was this angry person.
Allegedly.
Right, but I'm saying in the context of how whiteness has defined, and the structure has defined it for you at that particular time. He's consensual, like a menace to society,
right? And
even within his own space. But this man, we have to take him down. He's been taken down, infiltrated by the system to have him taken down. And it's like, okay, on the other hand, we have Martin Luther King, who's been put forth as this shining gem of niceness and nonviolence and peace. Allegedly, we'll realize what most of the history that we learned of him has been that portion, not realizing that there's a bit of his history that was also very much in alignment with Malcolm's ideals, whereas also Malcolm's ideals came in alignment with Martin, where they became one and the same and in agreement with what essentially needs to be done for the self efficacy and the upliftment of the African out of Brother Martin said, a burning house. He was taken away from us as well, even in that nonviolence.
But there's a bigger thing. Think about it. If people are at peace, there's no war. Yeah. If people are at peace, they'll be getting along.
If
If people are at peace, they'll be sharing and they won't need money. See, all of these are just manipulative mechanisms behind the black curtain, the Wizard of Oz, right? You know, you go back there behind the black curtain and you find out that it's a puppet master back there, a scared, petrified puppet master. Period. Like seriously, period. ... Period. So all of those things are all just illusions. No, not illusions. I can't say that. They are designed falsehoods, right?
Yeah.
They are in place because they're lived experiences. So they're not an illusion. It's lived experience that there is a black curtain with the puppet masters of the round table behind that curtain, pulling the strings, causing us to live off harmony, to be away from harmony, to keep confusion. And they literally just add a little mess, a little spice, a little confusion, a little disruption. Every so often, if you look at the repetition, I have some years now, and our young people get a real historic context so that they can look at these incremental hiccups that are happening all over the planet. Like you draw the map and you see on this year, that year, this happened, this year happened, this government, that leader was assassinated, there was movement over here doing this and that. If you start to catalog that experience, which is not a difficult journey because retrospect is 2020, right? So you can literally look at that map of those things and realize somebody was doing this. That's who you need to address when you get ready to restructure how you're thinking about what's a good quality of life for you as an African and a steward of the planet, a member of the human family, right? There's something warped, I'm going to say that again, about these consistent disruptions and interventions that are not helpful. In fact, continue to keep everyone in a pressure cooker, i.e. refer to the 48 laws of power.
Right.
That is a true psychographical profile of the behaviors of people.
Yeah.
Even nondescript. I think the book Robert Greene sold how many millions of copies? 1 million or 3 million copies of this book? People talk about it all the time. 50 Cent made 50 laws of power. Like it's literally a thing. And we talked about this last season.
Yes.
So that we could go through the actual 48 laws. I think we went through about 25. And we broke them down as to what the underlying is in the intention and the energy. Energy is very important.
Right. And if you will look at, if that's the space that's, or the framework that's defined a lot of what quote unquote success is, or being, or tackling the matrix head on, then we see the residuals of that. We see that there's harm. We see that there's hurt. We see that there's, stepping over people. We see that there's, friendships and relationships broken, but someone is going to be on top. And it's an issue of someone has to win while someone else has to lose. And as that continues to permeate our daily existence and how we relate to one another, then that's how you can see the continued destruction of our human landscape. Period. Because there's always someone has to fall to wayside in order for someone else to get success, and that is not the case. That is not to be the case, and that's a fallacy that's been placed on us that we've been conditioned to believe. And brothers like Malcolm, and when Ho Chi Minh was speaking, and Yuri Kochiyama was speaking, is that it doesn't have to be that way. And in the education and in the application of the education and knowledge and consciousness, and compassion and understanding of other people and their trials, and being in that space of empathy and connection, allows us to be in a better state of humanity. And that's really what it's about, the humanity. But, and African right now is in a space of, like you said, in the pressure cooker, where we're not even thinking about the idea of thriving. We're thinking about just surviving, getting to the day to day. That's what we have. That's what we have in a scarcity-minded society, and particularly, even more so for the African, because of how the society is shaped to keep the African from that leg up.
And from the time to contemplate
in the back of the race, haven't even started the race yet, and the other has ran 5 laps already. So
in the process of creating that calm and that time to be creative. Because at this moment, I was saying to a brother recently, we think that we're getting ahead. We think that we're creating stuff, but the reality of it is we're creating out of scarcity. We're creating out of fear. How about what if we could actually build inside of tranquility and peace? What would then be the inspiration? Suppose we were creating because we want to improve humanity, not because we need microwaves. Right? Microwaves, I guess are all right. Like, I don't particularly care for them, just saying. Simply because I understand the environmental impacts of these things, right? A lot of the things that we've created now, we've gotten so confident with our amenities that thinking of not having our amenities in our rebuild makes people scared. People believe there will be anarchy. People are telling you that if these folks weren't in control with this system, that things would just go to the crap. Is that true? I don't think so. I'm actually up for the task, quite personally. I'm actually quite personally, and I want every African, I want every person, every human who believes in the golden rule, right? We're talking about Ho Chi Minh. We're talking about Confucianism. We're talking about Yuri Tsuchiyama, and her Maoist theories, right? We're talking about people who believed in the golden rule. Do unto others as you have others to do unto you, right? Something that apparently communism is like the devil. That's like evil to speak of people not having excess, right? Because there are people who have, let's just say really quickly, there's like 20 million. Why does someone need a $20 million house? Why does a family of 5 need 120 acres of land and a $20 million house?
Right. When we look at like even this push,
I'm just saying,
in this how capitalism has shaped our living experience, so now we're looking to make more black billionaires but what are you doing with those billions?
But what though?
For what? Just to say, hey,
for what? Because it's literally computer. It's enter.
Done and done, and you can easily be that billionaire, and it can easily be taken away.
You're not. Look what they did with the Bill Cosby.
Okay.
Look at the Bill Cosby. Look at the look at any given day. As long as you're living within someone else's framework, they can always pull the carpet from underneath you. Always.
And it would only be a matter.
And that's not sovereignty.
It would only be a matter of time for brothers like Jay-Z to say the wrong thing too deeply into the African consciousness, and it's over. There's been a teetering line he's been on with this conversation.
He's been in the great neutral area,
but he hasn't stepped over his boundaries just yet to where it's like his money's about to get messed up. So
it's entertainment. There's also a revolutionary entertainer. That's the person that speaks to the people's physical experience and not their actionable experiences. Okay. We're gonna get into this a little bit more on Soundbytes when we sail for season 5. This was just a quick touch. We
just wanted to check in.
Quick brush up on our consciousness, and just take this opportunity to honor our the People's Prince, our elder and ancestor Malcolm X.
That's right.
And just to synthesize his work. His work matters if we live the work.
Absolutely.
His sacrifice, his family's sacrifice, his wife's sacrifice, was pregnant with a set of twins when he was killed. His grandson grew up without his grandfather. His daughters, girls, they need their dads. At that time, we really wasn't raising single family homes in the African community. That really wasn't a thing. They only told us that in the system so they can get the extra food stamps because the system was doing whatever it was doing. Right, family? But we literally had families. We had 2-parent homes. Even if dad was drinking, even if dad slapped his wife every now and again, we still had family structure. We was working on it. We was getting somewhere a little bit. We was getting a little somewhere with it.
Right.
So we need to get back to that place, back to where we are applying his work, and his life matter, his work matter, his family sacrifice, his kids, his children, his wife, she sacrificed.
And in everything we've grown to understand of the family dynamics today and what didn't work. So let's apply that now to building these structures again and within our families and building them stronger than ever. For the younger generation going forward, that will be the parents and the families, and then soon to become the elders over time. Let's apply what we've learned as far as like what it means to be a quote unquote better parent or supporter or brother or sister, and really put that into action for the future. And I wanted to, before we close out, I just wanted to run through some and to just let them sit some quotes from the good brother Malcolm that I found to be some of my favorite quotes from him. For me, take a moment. For one, we declare our right on this earth to be a human being, to be respected as a human being, to be given the rights of a human being in this society, on this earth, in this day, which we intend to bring into existence by any means necessary. You can't separate peace from freedom, because no one can be at peace unless he has freedom. Who taught you to hate yourself? I'm for truth, no matter who tells it. I'm for justice, no matter who it's for or against. Oh, shit. I came here to tell the truth, and if the truth condemns America, then she stands condemned. Oh, shit. It is the process of miseducation that inhibits the full potential of a full nation. Anytime you beg another man to set you free, you will never be free. Freedom is something that you have to do for yourselves. Only those who have already experienced a revolution within themselves can reach out effectively to help others. You are not to be so blind with patriotism that you can't face reality. We cannot think of being acceptable to others until we have first proven acceptable to ourselves. And lastly, we cannot teach what we do not know, and we cannot lead where we will not go. So let's go there, family. Let's go there, family. Let's go all the way by any means. Love one another, love your brother, love your sister, be in moving grace and moving in upliftment and power for one another. Look to seek to understand, seek to be with your brother and your sister and your family, and do the critical analysis necessary. Peel back the layers necessary. Get to the truth, because the truth is the undeniable, and the truth is will lead us to where we need to be and identify with who we truly are. So we wish that upon you in this day, in commemoration and in love and in peace and in power, in the name of the good ancestor, Malcolm X, Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, Malcolm Little. We appreciate all that he's instilled in us, and that he sits with us. We are on the backs of giants that lead us and guide us down the pathway. May we be worthy all day, every day in this walk. With Brother Malcolm, Brother Fred, Sister Fannie Lou Hamer, all of our powerful ancestors, Martin Luther King, and going forward, sharing in the energy and the light and their walk in their mission for freedom and liberation for all peoples. Anything else you want to say?
Let's be the difference. Be the difference. Be the
Be
work.
the difference.
Be the difference that is different. Only knowledge applied is powerful. People make things happen, and people don't make things happen. Absolutely. Africans, let's make some things happen.
Let's make some things happen, African. Again, yes, one love. Absolutely.
Love.
Again, once again, please join us June 19th, for the official return season 5 of Soundbytes International Radio. But continue to stay locked with us on Instagram and Facebook, and on our social channels as we continue these conversations going forward in the Soundbytes necessary to consume and build. But yes, again, join us June 19th, and with more information to come on season 5.
Season 5.
We look forward to being with you again, family, on a regular basis, and sharing in the energy. So one love. I'm Hasir Kanefara, and this is
Neferatu Ma'ati Ra.
Want
to give a quick one love, a shout out, our good brother Paul Mooney, who transitioned on today. Another different revolutionary voice,
absolutely,
in the essential energy that was his designation.
Absolutely.
So let's give thanks. Let's open this the way that he is received.
Yes.
Give thanks.
We may have lost a physical giant in our community and physically, but we gained a powerful ancestor to add to our walk, to our guidance. So may he rest in power, rise in power, as we honor him today as well.
Give thanks.
Give thanks. So one love, family, peace and power too. We hope you have a great evening. See you in June. Peace.
Peace.